Welcome to another edition of Random Road Cuts here just on the east side of the Sierras on the June Lake Road, which is a little kind of spur loop that comes off of Highway 395. Looking up at the beautiful high Sierras there. There's still patches of snow from left over from this winter that will likely stick around since it's already well into October. And here's our road cut that I've chosen today. So let's go see what we can learn, kind of looking at this road cut together, looking at the rock type, see if we can piece together some sort of story. Thanks for joining me. I'm Geology Professor Shawn Willsey, and what we do in Random Road Cuts is I just pick a random road cut, one that I've never seen before and don't know much about, or at least regionally, and then we work through it systematically, making observations, hopefully coming up with some hypotheses or interpretations, and just see what we find together. You never know. So let's go ahead and tackle this one. Let's start with what we know regionally in this area. So we're in the Sierras, and the Sierras, of course, as many people know, the main rock type, and what I'm undoubtedly seeing way up here towards the sun to the west, is granitic rock. So Cretaceous, and I believe some Jurassic Age granites that formed as a subduction zone developed along the west coast, and volcanoes and magmas rose on the North American plate to feed those volcanoes. You had these big magma chambers that cooled and solidified to form the granites we see in places like Yosemite and other parts of the Sierras. What else do we know? Well, those magma chambers had to rise into something, and so a lot of the existing rocks they rose into were metamorphic rocks, and so we know that those might be a possibility here as well as we take a look at our road cut. And then finally, I mean, literally a few miles to the east are a chain of volcanoes, the Mono Inyo chain of volcanoes that run more or less north-south from just north of Bishop at Long Valley Caldera up to Mono Lake. So heck, we've got everything kind of on the table. Igneous rocks from the Sierras, possibly some metamorphic rocks that form the roof, what we call the roof pendant, or the pre-existing rocks that the magma's intruded into, and then the volcanic rocks out there to the west, or excuse me, to the east. I guess the one thing we don't have a bunch of in the Sierras are good, well-behaved sedimentary rocks. So let's maybe start on this outcrop here, which is nice because it's a little bit further off the road, and then we'll work our way to the east out into the sunlight and see what we can find. So heading up the little slope here. Take my sunglasses off. And I should have mentioned this, but I think you probably saw this when I looked at the outcrop. There is some crude layering here that runs more or less like this, sort of steeply inclined, dipping steeply to the right, which is more or less to the east. So let's take a look at this. Very hard, somewhat light colored, kind of a tan gray, I suppose. My hammer does not scratch it. Very hard, very brittle. If we break a little chunk off here, we can maybe get a good view of it. There's a nice little exposed piece. This looks like it's quartz rich for sure. I'm not seeing the sugary texture I would see like in a quartzite, although it could be a quartzite. It also looks like the way that the quartz is formed, it might have formed from a chemical solution, which might make this a chert. Now, even though chert is a sedimentary rock, because it's made out of quartz, it could be also what we sometimes call a metachert. And what the heck is the difference between a chert and a metachert, like a metamorphic chert? Well, a lot of times it's just the context, right? If you have other metamorphic rocks surrounding the chert, and there's clear evidence that the chert has undergone some degree of metamorphosis, then you might call it a metachert. We've got a nice fracture right here, possibly a fault, with some brown staining, some iron oxide staining on it. But the rock is highly fractured, not quite brecciated, but there's a lot of fracturing in this rock. It still looks pretty much the same as we move along. And then we've got kind of an interesting little overhang Something living up there, a bit of a space. None of this, even though we see some nice fractures in here, none of these are planar enough that they, at least to me, you know, just showing up obviously a few minutes ago, that they look like faults per se, and we're not seeing evidence of the offset. Looks like it's a lot of the same material. The layering shows up a little more pronounced right here. So you can see the layering cutting up at very high angles, maybe like 75-degree dip in the rock. The color's mostly the same, but then we get into a zone here where the rock's a little bit more oxidized, more brown. Looks like it could be a little bit softer as well. There's actually a natural recess from the gray, let's just call it quartz-rich rock right now, kind of indentation here where my hand is, and then when we pick up the gray rock again, it's more resistant. Again, still seems to be the same stuff. Very hard, quartz-rich. Right now, I'm thinking of calling it a chert because we're seeing some layering in it, some bedding. And it's not really what quartzite typically looks like to me. Another kind of reddish brown zone in here, sharp contact. In this little zone, we're getting some hints of not just fracturing, but brecciation. So you can see these dark chunks are somewhat separated from each other by the fractures. So not totally disaggregated, but getting there. So this rock's seen some history, I would say. We're also starting to see some white lines cutting through it, some veins, unless these of course are beds, because these are running more or less parallel to the layering here. So these could be beds of chert with different colors. Chert's one of those rocks that can be a myriad of colors. Some nice fracturing in here. So some fractured zones in our quartz-rich rock. And again, chert feels like the right thing right now, more than quartzite. So let's just go with that for now. Random roadside geology with Roadcuts. And kind of make it up as you go. Okay, so now we're getting a little bit more dark and light banding. Let me step down and get a better view for you folks. It's a little hard to see with the sun angle, but you can see some light and dark layers running through the rock. Most of them again seem to be pretty parallel to the dominant trend of the beds, if we can call them that. And then we hit a really cool contact here that extends about over to here of this brown zone, maybe about 2 meters, 6 or so feet wide, running again parallel to the zone. And what the heck is this stuff? So this is a little bit different. This does not look like chert. Oh, we haven't tested it with the acid bottle. Some of you were like, test it with the acid bottle. Because limestones can sometimes look like this too. I wasn't thinking it would. And that's not fizzing. And this material here is not fizzing as well. So no carbonate in the rock, no calcite so far. I'm gonna back up a little bit so you can see this reddish brown rock and how it runs through. It seems to be a little bit softer. Again, it's forming a bit of a recess compared to the gray rocks on either side. What you might be thinking, as I am, since we're here in the Sierras and we know granites and magmas move through the rocks spatially somewhere in this area, this could be a dike. But as we look at this closely, I'm just not seeing, now it's highly oxidized, it's hard to see everything, we need to get a fresh sample, but it doesn't look like it has any of the sort of crystals and the textures that we would typically see in igneous rock. And I can see a nice clear face right here. It honestly looks like more of the same. It looks mostly quartz rich and somewhat fine-grained, like the chert. So this could be just another bed of chert that's a little bit darker. Here's the rest of the way that we have to go, and rather than get down here too close to the road, I think I'm going to get up on this bench and we'll work our way to that point, which is pretty much the end of the outcrop. So let's hike up this thing. Okay, so now we've got more of these kind of dark gray, white layers. Again, there's that sharp contact with the brown material. This is interesting here. See how we have like a little lens shape piece and then another one here. And if you look closely, you'll see several more. These could be, this could be what we call, this would be a bed of chert, but these could be what we call boudins. And they look like little sausage links. So here's one here, and then there's another one there, and then a couple small ones there, and then another one right there. And these can tend to form, and then there's even some up on this face over here. Can't tell for sure if they are boudins, but if they are, boudins formed by things being stretched out. So kind of like sausage links. Okay, what else do we have up here? More of the same. Although here we may have some evidence of folding, perhaps, right? Does that look like that maybe is the same little white bed that's been wrapped around on itself? And similarly, I wonder if this one wraps around and is connected to that. It's a little hard to tell. The exposure is not awesome, but interesting. So there's definitely been some deformation in these rocks. You can see some little cuts here where the white has been offset. So evidence maybe a little bit of faulting. Here's like a little, again, if these are white chert beds, or because I don't think they're veins, they're not. I think they look more like chert than anything else. But there's been some deflection of the materials, a little bit of folding. So it looks like this material's been deformed a little bit, possibly both squeezed and extended, which can happen. Then we've got another brown zone there that looks very similar to what we saw. Another area of kind of dark and light, alternating beds. Again, this, I think the color has changed. There's been a few slight variations in outward appearance and texture, but for the most part, I think this is all the same stuff. I think this is all chert, or maybe meta-chert. Maybe this stuff's been metamorphosed, which would make sense. I mean, we're not too far away from outcrops as the crow flies that we know are granite, and so it's possibly that this stuff is sitting on top of and was either metamorphosed in the subduction zone from the pressure, or maybe a little bit by the magma that intruded it. Let's go up one more step here. Again, this looks like the stuff we almost started with, the brown, highly fractured material here. And then we kind of end at the end of the outcrop there. But I don't want to go any further. We're right on the edge of the little escarpment here. So let's step back down and see if we can wrap this up with some sort of story. Hopefully that was kind of helpful. I'm kind of perplexed on this one. The last few random road cuts, I feel like I've had pretty good handle on. This one, I'm open to interpretations, and maybe we'll wrap this up back down at the road. But it seems to me that we've got a quartz-rich outcrop or road cut of what we think is chert. Again, I do not think this is a quartzite or something that was once a sandstone. And then possibly it's been metamorphosed. And so these rocks show evidence of fracturing. They show evidence of possibly folding and some faulting, maybe some extension. And so this could be one of these relic chunks of metamorphic rocks that sit either within or just above the magma, the granite that formed and rose into this area when the main phase of the Sierras formed. So who knows? I'll have to see if I can find some information on this little spot. But hopefully you enjoyed this. Another random road cut right here on the June Lake Road. On a busy Saturday, we managed to get across the road without incident, so that's good. So thanks for joining me. Appreciate your like, sharing, subscribing. Donations are always accepted. If you like these random road cuts, let me know, and we'll keep them coming, because there's obviously an endless amount of them out there. Plenty of things for us to look at, scratch our heads over, and hopefully try to make heads or tails of more often than not. Thanks for joining me, and have a good one.